Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh, Satnam, and welcome to the program Learn-a-Shabad. And it's part of our ongoing series that we're calling Dharma Dive Live, which is a series of different formatted programs, each week a different format, always on Wednesday at the same time. So for those of you arriving now, please do put your name and where you're logged in from in the comments section. It'll help me keep track of who's here and what's going on. Welcome Mahan Sangeet and Kirandeep Kaur. Nice to see you both. So as the name of this program says, we're going to be focusing on learning a Shabad each time we have this program. And we'll have them at least once a month, is my guess, moving forward. And so this week, we're focusing on a fairly simple Shabad. It's short, at least. So that's a good place to start. And if you have a harmonium, you'll want to get that out and have it with you so that you can see where the fingers are going on the keyboard, which may help you. Now, if you're an advanced player, this program may not be all that challenging for you. But if you are just beginning, I think that this will give you a good start. And then each program will build skills as we go to get more and more capable of playing Shabads in the Sangat, which is really where I'm hoping that this program may take you. Because it's great to play for ourselves, but it's even more engaging of the heart and the spirit when you can take that experience of playing a Shabad and lead a Sangat to sing it. Now, maybe that's in the Gurdwara, or maybe that's in a home gathering. Maybe it's just your family initially, and that's fine, whatever works for you. So I'm just going to take a quick look in the, So you may notice that there was a link put at the very start of the comments section, and that link is a page on the Sikh Dharma International website that has the Shabad sheet. In other words, it has the Gurmukhi, the transliteration for English speakers, and a translation in English for this week's Shabad. And we'll try to keep adding the Shabad each time to that same place so that each time you come to learn the Shabad, it'll be there for you. So welcome Deborah and Carla and Flory, Nevdita, and Jai Prakash. So for those of you just arriving, so just letting you know that you may want to get out a harmonium if you have one. This class will be more meaningful, I think, if you actually do some playing of the Shabad. So I'm going to start by going through the Shabad line by line with a practice. I'll say a line and I'll not be able to hear you, but I'll give you a space for you to say the line. We'll do that a couple of times with each line, and that way we'll go through the whole Shabad so that for those of you for whom these words are new or for whom making these sounds at all may be a challenge, that way hopefully you'll hear them more clearly before you try to start to sing them. So, you know, when I learned Kirtan 45 years ago, I didn't have the benefit of an online resource, but I did have a friend here or a friend there that might know a little. And slowly, I added bits and pieces. And then eventually, after a couple of years, I found a teacher. And so my recommendation is that, after COVID, when you have time to get out there and find a teacher, that may be the best way to learn one-on-one with someone who you can see has knowledge and experience as a kirtani. They don't have to be a professional ragi. They can still have a lot of experience to share with you. So that's I want to make it clear that this is a beginning point today, and most of these classes are going to be a beginning point. To really go deeper, you'll want to find a teacher later on. And I want to be also really clear that these classes are not in what these classes will not be teaching. And they will not be teaching how to read Gurmukhi. In case you want that, we are working on an online program that should come out in a few weeks that will help with that. And there are some other very good online resources for learning to read Gurmukhi. However, the other thing that this class won't be teaching is rag. And if you don't know what that word means, then don't worry. But for those of you who do, rag is the classical musical form from India. And a lot of people who go deep into kirtan may spend at least some time studying rag. And it's a way of understanding a musical form. It's formal, and in that way, it takes more study. And we will not really be going into that in these classes. This is really just a pretty basic class. We're going to try to sing the Shabad, and then each week, we'll try for another Shabad. And so along the way, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the comments, and I will try to see. I'll try to make note to see them, and if I can include them as we go, that'd be great. I'm sorry, Kirandeep, you couldn't find the link. Huh. Okay. Well, I can see it, but maybe nobody else can. Maybe I posted it incorrectly. But thank you for putting the Shabad there, the words for the Shabad. And I'm going to bring up the words myself on the screen. I'm going to share my screen in just a moment. So anybody I haven't mentioned, Angad, welcome, and Deborah. So nice to see all of you here today. So let me share the Shabad with you, and we'll go through the lines, and then we'll get to the melody part. So I think that's always a good thing that's a good place to start. When you want to learn a Shabad, it's easier to learn it if you're at least familiar with most of the words. Doing it line by line with the music and the words, that can be done, and I know I've done it when I first started out, but I do recommend getting familiar with the words a little bit before you start trying to sing the words to a melody. And there are many melodies. This Shabad, I play 3 different melodies, I think, but I'm going to show you today just one. And there are 1,000 recordings out there of this Shabad. So if you find a melody that speaks to you or resonates better than the one I'm showing you, that's fine. It's then up to you to listen and try to figure out how to play it. And I will tell you that being able to play the harmonium and sing a Shabad is a skill that does get easier the more you do it. And that being able to listen to a recording and then figuring out how to play that is also a skill that also takes practice, and you do get better over time. A lot of times when we listen to a recording, we may only actually notice um, 80% of the notes that are actually being played or sung. Because of the way the voice works, because of the way the fingers work very quickly, we may not notice that there are other notes that are actually being used in the recording. And it's okay, you do your best, but as you get better at it, then you start noticing the finer points, the what's called transition notes. So instead of just going from one note to another, there might be a little stepping note in between. And those kind of extras, they can really make for a more beautiful experience to sing, to listen, for the sungit as well. So, um, and welcome Emal and Kadam Devi. So let me bring up the Shabad now. So this is the first part of the Shabad. You should be able to see that. The first line, Hama avaguna bade ekaguna nai. So that is the first line. And here's something for beginners that you may not know. The first line is not always the repeated line or the chorus. A lot of times there is a line further down that is either indicated in the Gurbani itself with the word rahau, which often means that this is the most important line in the composition, and therefore many people, when they sing it, will choose to make that line the repeating line. But that isn't a hard and fast rule, and sometimes people will know a Shabad by a particular line, but again, it may not be the first line. So here is also true that the line Ik Ardas Batikirati Guru Ramdas Rako Sernai is actually not the first line. And we'll see it when we scroll down. But so this first line is more often not used as the repeat line, but it sometimes is. And in fact, the tune we're going to learn today uses this line as the repeating line. And the Ik Ardas line is just one of the verse lines. So, just making that clear. So let's go through this first line, and I'll divide it into phrases, and I'll say a phrase, and then I'll give you time to say that, and we'll say it again, and you say it, and then we'll go to the next phrase, and I'll say it, and then you say it, and I'll say it, and you say it, and then we'll continue forward, going forward. So, by the way, those of you who are returning members of our little community here, I just want to check. This is a whole new sound system from what we used for the first few months of our programs. And I just want to be sure if you're not able to hear well, please let me know in the comments so I can make adjustments. But if I see no comments, then I'll assume the sound is all fine. So here we go with the first line. I better clear my voice here. So we'll start out with the first part of this line. Hum avaguna pare. Now you say. Hum avaguna pare. I'll do it again. Hum avaguna pare. And you say, Hum avaguna pare. Good. The next phrase, Ek guna nahi. Now you say, Ek guna nahi. And I'll say it again, Ek guna nahi. And you say, Ek guna nahi. And then next part, Amrit shad. And you say, Amrita Shada, Amrita Shada, Amrita Shada. And then the last part of this line, Bike Bikakai. You say, Bike Bikakai. And I'll say, Bike Bikakai. And you say, Bike Bikakai. Now I'll say half the line and then you repeat after me. Ham avaguna bare ekaguna nahi. And you say, Ham avaguna bare ekaguna nahi. And then the second half of the line, Amrita Shada Bike Bikakai. Amrita Shada Bike Bikakai. Good. All right, so that's the first line of the Shabad, and today the melody we'll use, we'll repeat that line, and we'll get to the melody in just a few minutes. We'll go through the rest of the lines so that you get a little familiar with them. So the second line of this Shabad, we could just touch on the meaning there. So this translation reads for the first line, Hamavagunabadi Ekagunanai Amrita Shada Bike Bikakai. I am overflowing with sins and demerits. I have no merits or virtues at all. I abandoned the ambrosial nectar and I drank poison instead. All right, so it's a pretty bleak statement, but clearly this is from a point of saying I'm humbled by my own inability to make positive impact in my life. So, next line, and I'll say a phrase and then you say after me. Hey, Deborah, just go ahead and put the question in the chat and I'll look at it in a moment. Okay? So, my amor. Now you say, my amor, my amor, my amor. Brahma pabule, Brahma pabule, Brahma pabule, Brahma pabule. And next part, Suttadara. And you say, Suttadara, Suttadara, Suttadara. Next part, Sion Prita Lagai, Sion Prita Lagai, Sion Prita Lagai, Sion Prita Lagai. And now I'll say half the line, and you repeat it after me, and then we'll say the second half of the line. My amor, Brahma pabule, my amor, Brahma pabule, Suttadara syo prita lagai, Suttadara syo prita lagai. Good. And the translation of this line is, I am attached to Maya. Maya meaning the illusory world around us. And deluded by doubt, I have fallen in love with my children and spouse. So, just talking about how all these relationships in life, all of it is just transitional, that we are ultimately going back into that merger with the infinite. And so to put all of our focus only on those relationships and the Maya, the entanglements of this life is an error, really. Let me move the line down. Okay, I think we can see the next line. And I'll say a phrase. Ik utam pant. Now you. Ik utam pant. Again. Ik utam pant. And you. Ik utam pant. Next phrase. Sunyo Guru Sangata. Sunyo Guru Sangata. Sunyo Guru Sangata. Sunyo Guru Sangata. Next phrase. Tehe Malanta. Tehe Malanta. Tehe Malanta. Tehe Malanta. Jamatras Mitai. Jamatras Mitai. Jamatras Mitai. Jamatras Mitai. Good. And the translation of this line is, I have heard that the most exalted path of all is the Sangat, the Guru's congregation. Joining it, the fear of death is taken away. Okay, I don't think that needs much explanation. And then the last line, as many people know this line quite well, Ik Ardas, Ik Ardas, Ik Ardas, Ik Ardas, Bhatakirataki, 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 Guru Ramadas, Guru Ramadas, Guru Ramadas, Guru Ramadas, Rakho Saranai, Rakho Saranai, Rakho Saranai, Rakho Saranai. All right. And the last line translates, Kirit, the poet, offers this one prayer. O Guru Ramdas, save me. Take me into your sanctuary. Great. So I'm just going to check in with Deborah's question here. She asks, I have never seen Amrit spelled with an N. Are you pronouncing that? Do those two vertical lines mean a pause? Sometimes you see numbers throughout a Shabad. What do those refer to? All right, these are great questions. So Amrit is, there is a kind of nasal to the M. It's not quite Amrit, it's Amrit. It's more nasally. And so that's where some transliterations use an N sound in there to remind us that it's Amrit. As you're saying the M sound, you're vibrating in the nasal area too. And then the vertical lines do mean the ending of a line, so you'll see each of these lines rhymes. Mitai, Saranai. And so at the end of the line, there is this double line as punctuation, really. And then the numbers, they relate to the how shall I say, it's a longer section of scripture. And that this is a particular section within a longer selection, and that each of the smaller sections is numbered. And so these numbers help like a chapter and a page almost, kind of keeping track of where we are in relation to the longer composition. So sometimes all that longer composition is written by one author, but sometimes it's compilation of several different authors. So sometimes there'll be a name change, or you'll have to put a little more study into that. I'm not going to have time to teach you everything about how the City Guru Granth Sahib is organized right now, but I think I've answered those questions, and so we'll move along. All right, so now I want to talk about the melody part of this. And to do that, I'm going to show my keyboard, and I'm going to have to hide this this Shabad temporarily. So just bear with me. So you should be able to see the keyboard now, and my fingers on the keyboard. So one thing to understand is that typically men and women have a different vocal range, so that it's comfortable to sing a melody for a woman, perhaps a little higher, and more comfortable for a male singer to sing lower. Now that normally makes sense, right? Because men seem to have lower voices, women have higher voices. But we do this funny thing when we sing, and that is that when I sing the note, mostly if there are women here singing with me, they'll actually be singing, so they're singing what's called an octave higher. And that's the octave. And it's just the way we hear the world, you know. Men and women growing up, that's how we start to find our way to match when we sing. So if there's a male voice singing, the women are usually singing an octave above. Now that's fine, except when the melody goes really high, and then the women have to jump back down. And maybe you've experienced that, where you're singing along with somebody, especially a male ragi, and they might take the melody up very high, and then as a woman, you'll find you have to jump down into what's called your lower register. And that's fine, but awkward at times. And when you're leading the melody, when you're singing the kirtan, then you want to make sure that the melody fits within your range and that you aren't doing that kind of jumping around. So if I can show you on the keyboard, here's a melody, and I can see right now that I'm having a little problem with this video of my keyboard, in that it's delayed by maybe half a second or so. So it's not exactly in time with the sound. And just bear with me. I'll try to get this fixed by the next lesson. So if I'm singing this is not the melody we're going to use today, but I'm just demonstrating. Ik Ardas Pat ki rat ki Guru Ramdas Rakho Sarnai. Okay, so that part falls in what I call the middle zone. It's usually not too high for women, and it's not too low for men. But then what happens in the verse lines is, sorry, where am I? Hum avgun pare ek gun nai. So going up to this range is going to be mostly too high for women. And so they're going to be jumping down vocally to make that happen. However, I could take that same melody and fix it lower on the keyboard. So now we're down here. Ik Ardas Patakirati Guru Ramdas Rako Saranai. So it's low for me. I don't have a lot of volume down here. But it's comfortable for the women, for sure. Now, if I take the verse line at this setting, Maya mo Brahma pebule Sutta darasyo pritalagai Sutta darasyo pritalagai Ikardas. So now we've moved the melody, the whole melody, lower, and it's within the range for most women's vocal range. So that's where we have to be a little tuned into what's going to work for your voice, right? And, you know, we have men and women on this call. So men, you know, they may want to stay in a higher range on the keyboard because it works, but women are going to want to shift it lower, which is sort of counterintuitive. But that's fine. That's just what we do. So the melody we're going to learn today is actually set pretty low because the majority of you are women. So that's where I wanted to go today. So the line that we're going to repeat is the first line of the Shabad, Hama avaguna bade ekagunanai. And it starts down here. So if you know anything about piano or the name of the notes by Western music, you'll know that this is middle C, and that this is C sharp, and this is G sharp. All right, so we often play based in the black notes for kirtan. Why is that? Well, it's a tradition that's been passed down. You know, the harmonium was not originally a kirtan instrument. It arrived in India, brought by Christian missionaries, Dutch and English missionaries coming to India. And the way they brought it is that this back part on the harmonium where I pump the air was actually underneath the harmonium and was filled with air by pumping with your feet sitting at a chair. And that was great. You know, that allowed the missionaries to use both hands to play because the music of the West is polyphonic, chordal, so that you can make chords with both hands, right? Or making an accompaniment with the left hand and the melody with the right, that kind of thing. But in India, all sacred traditions sit on the floor. There's no chairs, there's no pews. So for the musician to sit up on a chair and play the harmonium by sitting and pumping with their feet totally wouldn't have worked by protocol. So they took the bellows off from underneath the harmonium, used the same keys, you know, the same reeds, and then put the bellows on the back of the harmonium because they only needed one hand, because mostly Indian music is monophonic. In other words, It's about the melody and not about creating chords. So playing one note at a time is quite typical. If you think of a stringed instrument, an Indian stringed instrument, they're generally, aside from the droning of the tambura, the drone notes, which would be sa or pa or both sometimes, then the melody is just played on the stringed instruments one note at a time. And that's why the harmonium came in as a kind of modern instrument in India, but it really has a lot of drawbacks because it doesn't have microtones. In other words, the notes between two of the keys, which in the Indian system can be played on a stringed instrument. You can actually hear those microtones, but you can't do it on the keyboard. So the keyboard is a kind of second-rate instrument in some ways, never really studied as a classical instrument of itself. It accompanies classical vocalists, but it never is used as a performance instrument in classical music. So for us to use the harmonium, we just have to figure out where we want to set our shabad. So as I said, I'm going to set it low down here. And the shabad starts on this note, which is the G sharp. But in actual fact, the main scale used in this shabad is sa. If you know anything about Indian musical scales, the sa is on the C sharp. So when you study rag, if you study rag, you will be exposed to this idea of the saregama, sargams, which are exercises to learn the scale, learn the notes. And each rag has a different scale. Sometimes it's one way going up and a different way coming down. Some notes are emphasized more than others. Different rules in rag. But that informs the way that we approach playing kirtan, because the tradition of kirtan really comes out of that rag background. And so to know a little bit about that is helpful, but ultimately I feel very strongly that all music can be used, all musical approaches can be used with kirtan, with gurbani, shabad. So a lot of people now using guitars, and in fact I was thinking that we could bring in the guitar for this, but we'll probably see if we can do it on a later program. But certainly other instruments can be used. Even now you see from India people using mandolins and guitars, and across the globe there are a lot more people using Western instruments along with Gurbani Kirtan. So there's a lot more that can be done these days than was considered possible even 20 years ago, certainly 50 years ago. So, all right, now to get to this melody. This is a tune that I recorded on the first recording I did. Well, yeah, it was actually the second recording, but it's still around, this recording. And the album is called Prayer for the Golden Temple. And this shabad was on there. And it starts in this G sharp. And it goes up like this. Hum avaguna bari. Hum avaguna bari. Ek guna nai. Hum avaguna bare. Ek guna nai. So I apologize that my fingers are out of sync with the sound. As I say, I'll try to fix that by the next time we do this. But Nonetheless, what you're looking at is this note, going up to this note with a kind of slide. And sliding back down to that. And then so then again this note to that note, gun, and then it comes down to that note, nai. Now we go way up to here. Chad. Amrita Chad. Bike bikakai. Bike bikakai. All right? So let's look at that whole line again. Ham avaguna pare ek guna nai. Amrita chada. Bike, all right. Amrita chada. Bike bikakai. Bike bikakai. So, yeah, maybe it's interesting. Yeah, maybe the delay isn't so affecting you guys and it's only affecting me. I don't know. But you'll notice that I use different fingers sometimes for the same note. And some people will tell you, no, you always have to use the same fingering. You know, that's a place to start and it'll help you. But ultimately, the fingering of the keyboard should not be so dependent on habit. You should be able to have some flexibility because you may want to add little things later. So when I play this normally, I'm adding little grace notes and rhythm notes. So, hum avaguna pare ekaguna nai. Amrita chada bike bikakai. Hum avaguna pare. So you can do that if you're not fixed to playing that with a thumb. So you want to keep variations available to you so that you're not stuck in one place. Now let's look at the first line of the verse. Starts here. So this is an F note, if you know Western music. And in the scale of this melody, it is really the Ga. My amor, but I'm up at bule. Let's do it again. My amor, but I'm up at bule. Sotte daration prit legaye. Let's do it again. My amor, Brahma Pebule Sutdarasyo Pritalagay. Then it goes back to the chorus. Ham avaguna bare ek guna nai amrit chanda bike bikakai. So I'm just checking in with you. Yeah, I would love to learn how to accompany with the tabla. Great. So this can be a big challenge for beginner students, is to then how to bring a tabla accompaniment into playing your Shabad. And I will warn you that you'll have to, don't ever do it first time playing in front of people, but definitely take some time to rehearse with your tabla player, because they will be doing things that will throw you off initially, and you'll want to be sure that you check in with them, that you're staying on the rhythm. So this is a rhythm that is typically in the India system referred to as Kerva, which means 4 or 8 beats. And so if we're counting on 4 fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Hum avaguna, hum avaguna ba. So the bade comes in on the 1 beat. And that's really not that unusual, that the 1 beat is not where you start singing. So here we're coming in on the 3rd beat. On the 2nd beat. Hum avaguna bade ek guna nai amrit chada bike bikakai. 1. Hum avaguna bade. 1. Ek guna nai. 1. Amrit chada bike bikakai. 1. So you see that you're going to have to work a little bit to get your rhythm right. And in fact, I like to work with my hands. I'll use my fingers like this. And if there are actually, let's say, 8 beats to it, I'll sometimes go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I know where I am in the cycle. And then I can start to just sing it to myself and make sure I fit, that my melody that I'm singing fits to the rhythm. Because it will challenge you if you're not familiar enough to get that right. So that's again why having an in-person teacher will really help you. So we have just about 11 minutes left. So I want to go through the 3rd and 4th line with this melody so that you can go back and watch this video and figure out where the words fit to the melody, which is an important part of this, is fitting the words in with the rhythm and the melody. So the 3rd line on this Shabad is Ik Uttam Pant Sunio Guru Sangata. So Ik Uttam Pant Sunio Guru Sangata te milant jam trasmtai. Ik uttam pant suniyo gur sangat te milant jam trasmtai. So that's a really tricky line to start. So we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Uttamapan. So again, it starts on the second beat. 1. Ik uttamapanta. Do it again. 1. Ik uttamapanta. Suniyao Guru Sangata. Temelanta Jamma. Trasamitai. So sometimes when there's a pause after the 1, sometimes there's 2 beats paused and sometimes only 1 beat. So you have to really listen and figure out when you're coming in after that 1 beat. Okay? So on this line, the second half of the line, it comes in not on the second beat but on the third beat. So it's 1, 2. Temelanta Jamma. And again, there comes on the third beat. So watch that as I play. Ik uttamapanta suniyao guru sangata temelanta jamma trasamitai. All right, now let's do the fourth line. And the fourth line is Ardas Patikirati Gurandas Rakosanai. Ik Ardas Batikirati Guru Ramdas Rakosanai. And again. Ik Ardas Bhatakirati Guru Ramdas Rako Saranai. Amma avaguna pare ek guna nai. Amrit Chanda Bike Bikakai. Sorry. Anyway, so shoot me your questions real quick. We've got just a few minutes left. Thank you, Angad, for adding some understanding on the words. That's great. Let's see. All right, nobody's putting in their questions, but or maybe they're writing really long questions. Well, you have a few minutes to write those long questions, but not too much longer. So what I'm hoping is that you will be able to go back and rewatch this, because I've gone pretty quickly through the fingering of the notes. But clearly, one of the biggest things that you need to pay attention to is when the words, the lyrics, start on which of the 4 beats that you're playing. So that's going to be really key to getting this so that it sounds like it keeps going. Because if you miss a beat, don't stop if you're performing. Just let the tabla player catch up. But if you miss a beat, it can throw everybody off, because everybody's trying to sing along with you. And so you want to try to get it right. You know, it's part of the responsibility of being a kirtani is to allow the sangat to relax while you're playing. If they're worried, if they're on edge that you're not going to make a line work, that it's going to be not correct rhythmically, or the words won't fit the way they need to, then that causes an imbalance, and people are restless and not satisfied, not able to just relax, be in sahaj, be in ease with the Shabad, with the word, with the experience of the sound current. So it is one of the responsibilities of the person leading the kirtan, the kirtani, that they need to practice and get it right before they come to sit in the Sangat. So I did find a teacher, as I said, after a few years I was living in London, and I was able to study with a wonderful Ragi by the name of Bhagwant Singh, who played at Shepherd's Bush Gurdwara for years and was just awesome. And he taught me a lot, and not just in the lessons when I would work with him, because there weren't that many of the lessons that we had, but even just watching him, I learned a lot. And I remember him saying to me that when you learn a Shabad, you have to play it 1,000 times before you play it in the Sangat for the first time. And maybe that is an overstatement, but it's not a bad thing to remember, is that you need to get yourself at ease with all the parts, the fingering, the rhythm, the words. You need to be at ease before you take it into the Sangat, because whatever level of anxiety you carry, that will get amplified within the Sangat, and the people listening and wanting to sing will not be relaxed. So, it's a responsibility that we take on when we step into that role. So let's see what questions we have here. So Sat Kirtan is asking if I can share the Sade Gama, and that is possible, and we may do that in later Shabads. I wanted to be sure that for people who don't already know that, the system of Sade Gama Pada Nisa, that it would have been harder for them to have to learn that and learn how to play this. So I like to, at this beginning stage, not overemphasize knowing the names of the notes, and rather just look where your fingers are going and match to mine, and then it'll work. But as I said earlier, the sa is really here, even though we start the singing down here on pa. Avaguna bare sa. So then sa re ga ma pa. And do we have a da? Let me think. Yeah, there's da. There's ni. So ni is komal, for those of you who know what that means. Ni is flat. Yeah. And you'll notice that I do put in these extra fingerings for rhythm purposes. Now, when you have a really good tabla player, I recommend not doing that much, because the tabla is filling in all those extra little spaces rhythmically. So then when I'm playing with someone who's a really good tabla player, I'm going to be doing fewer of those kind of rhythmic things. But certainly it's great if you're playing without a tabla player. So those kind of things help when you don't have a tabla player. But if you do, then you can just play it. Avaguna bare ekaguna nai amrita chanda bike bikakai. It's a long time since I played that Shabad. Anyway, that melody anyway. So I am so glad that this has worked out. If you have any suggestions to make this better, and yes, perhaps the next time I will have the notation for the Sadegama that I can show you, and then you can look at it, or perhaps I'll have it as a download that you can download a PDF and see it. So I'll work on that. Well, great. I am so glad this worked out. Glad you could come and share this time with me. This was our first attempt to teach a Shabad. Next week, as you see in the banner streaming across the bottom of the screen, we will be doing the interview and music program, Home Kirtan and Chat. And I'm very happy to be welcoming our guest, Siri Sadhna Kaur from the UK. She's a wonderful Kirtani, and she has a new recording out, and we'll be talking about that. She'll be playing some music for us. So I hope to see you at the same time next week on Wednesday. Be well, be safe, stay healthy. Many blessings. Thank you all. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.